Hey, what's going on? Welcome to your Thursday episode of Locked On Raptors. And on today's show, we are digging deep into a Raptors win over the Minnesota Timberwolves last night in Minnesota to close out the pre-All-Star schedule with a big-time win to get back on the win column after a couple of losses. We're going to dig into Thad Young and how he has just blended in so beautifully, and I have fallen extremely fast and hard. We're going to talk about him. We'll talk about a really grinded out effort from the Raptors and how they were able to use their defense to beat a very, very stout Wolves team. And we've got the dude of the game to hand out, as we always do. That's all coming up on today's episode of Locked On Raptors with special guest Yasmin Duale from Yahoo Sports.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? Welcome to episode number 1121 of Locked On Raptors for Friday, February the 17th. I'm your host, Sean Woodley of RaptorsHQ.com. You can find me on Twitter, as always, at WoodleySean, and you can find the show free and available on all your favorite podcast platforms. Please go find it on the audio feeds. You can subscribe, rate, review, tell a friend, and you can also go to YouTube and subscribe to the video version of the podcast where you get to see my face every day. As I'm currently going through something, I'm in a hat phase because I haven't gotten a haircut in like 3 months. It's going to happen soon. I'll look good on the stream again soon. Until then, you get dumpy Sean wearing a hat and a hoodie. But either way, thank you, as always, for making us your first listen of the day. And on today's show, we're digging into a Raptors 103-91 win over the Minnesota Timberwolves in Minnesota last night. A very... I would say gutsy effort from a team that didn't have its A game necessarily, but got a couple big performances from Pascal Siakam, Gary Trent Jr., some guys off the bench. And here to talk all about the game, dig into our big takeaways, hand out the dude of the game, and just shower Thad Young with praise. It is Yasmin Duale from Yahoo Sports Canada, from Dishes and Dimes. You're all over the place, Yasmin. You're taking over the world. How's it going? Welcome back to the show.
I'm well. Thanks for having me.
Really happy to have you. I should note, so this game I watched last night after I was at a soccer game in Hamilton. The CONCACAF Champions League brought its way to Hamilton, and I was watching Forge FC take on Cruz Azul down at Tim Hortons Field. And so I got home a little bit late, and I watched the game on PVR with no spoilers or distractions. That was at least my intention. I got a notification at like 10:30 when the game ended saying final score. And I was like, oh no, I looked at it. I didn't see who won and what the result was, but I read 103-101. And I was like, oh God, this is going to be a close game. It was of course 103-91. But in the back part of this game, as I'm watching it in the final 2 minutes, the Raptors are up 10. And I'm like, something bad's going to happen here, isn't it? I was just waiting for the impending collapse. They were talking all day long about the Wolves coming back from down 13 against the Hornets the night before, and I was preparing for some kind of doom. But nope, just a tidy, take care of business type of win for the Raptors in this one. And I guess we should start with our biggest takeaways, and I will defer to the guest on this one. Yas, what was your biggest takeaway from the Raptors' 32nd victory of the season to close out the pre-All-Star schedule?
I think a major takeaway for me would be that the defensive ceiling on this team is quite high because even like on paper, it looks like they had a great defensive night, but I still see so many things that they could improve on. Like I feel like there are stretches where they still have mental lapses and the rotations are not nearly as crisp as they could be. So it kind of just gives you a little bit of a glimpse into what they could be if they're already a solid defensive team when they're, firing on all cylinders and full health. What can they be when they have more time together, when they start to understand their defensive rotations better, when they, right now, I feel like the chemistry isn't perfect on that end of the floor. I think they've improved their offensive chemistry a little more than defensive chemistry. Like there's still times where I'm like, I'm seeing more open threes on this team than I have in the last maybe 3 years, being allowed by opposition. So they're not perfect yet, but they're already quite good when they, hunker down and try to close out a tough game. Especially, I think you noticed their defense kind of tighten up when the offense isn't rolling. Because they went like since the first quarter up until like what was it, towards the end of the fourth or the last 5 minutes of the fourth or something without hitting a 3-pointer.
Yeah.
So they were able to use their offense to feed their use their defense to feed their offense, get those turnovers, turn them into fast break opportunities. So it worked out in the end.
Yeah, I thought this was a really impressive game overall because it was not at all a game within the Raptors' comfort zone, right? Like, it was a slow half-court game. They had to run a lot of half-court stuff.
Yeah.
The zone that the Wolves were throwing at them gave them a ton of trouble. And you mentioned they didn't hit a three between the end of the first and the start of the fourth when Boucher hit that corner three, followed by that Precious three as well, which, like, man, whenever Precious hits a three, it's just gold falling from the sky into the laps of the Raptors. So we're going to talk about Precious later on, but just it's massive. But to go that long without a three against a team that was exclusively playing zone for the most part, the Raptors had no business winning this game. Like, it's just, they stink against zone, and they really were kind of flummoxed by it in the middle part of the game. And you're right. They kind of compensated for that with their defense, just really clamping down on an offense that is ranked top 10 in the NBA. Karl-Anthony Towns got his, but everybody else on that Wolves team really struggled. Anthony Edwards didn't make a field goal in this game. He was 0 of 8 from the field.
Yeah.
D'Angelo Russell couldn't get going. He was just 2 of 11. Like, just a really top to bottom, excellent defensive effort. That late third quarter into the fourth, when they really put the clamps on, they only gave up 40 second half points. Like that, you're right. There's a ceiling here. They've still been kind of muddling around middle of the league in terms of defensive efficiency. They're 13th right now. I would say if you look at the teams ahead of them, there's some really good defenses in there, but there's no reason this team at its kind of peak, maybe not this season, but as it kind of continues to gel and coalesce, can't be threatening to be a top 5 defense all the time. I think they're that good.
Right.
I want to talk a little bit about the zone because that was a tricky part of this game for the Raptors to navigate. Chris Finch, there's no secrets here. He knows everything about this Raptors team. And when you look at this Raptors roster with no Fred VanVleet available, it makes a lot of sense to zone up because there's really, right now with OG Anunoby struggling as bad as he is, there's like one knockdown 3-point shooter you're worried about, and that's Gary Trent Jr. And they just were really, really diligent in sticking to that zone until the fourth quarter when they started to dice it up in the middle, and then it opened it up for Pascal Siakam to kind of go to work and just sort of draw all the attention in man defense and find open guys. 9 assists for him. But what did you make of the way the Raptors attacked the zone? Again, kind of finding success without hitting threes, which is a really difficult way to beat the zone. How did you like the way they went about dissecting it?
I think that the traditional Raptors route when it comes to dealing with the zone is to just make a little bit of space and hit your threes. I think that's been like, whenever I think of the Raptors combating a zone, I think of that. I don't know if you remember, but that Miami game in the 2019-20 season where I feel like it was, I think Serge, Mark, and Kyle were healthy, and the rest of the roster, something like that. Like, I remember they were really, really shorthanded. And Miami zoned up, and I think it was I think they broke an NBA record in 3-pointers missed or something that night because it just didn't work. So to see them combat the zone in this way, where it was more, I think in the beginning we saw them. I was a little worried because they were using OG, I feel like, to get into the middle, and he wasn't having too much success posting up really close to the basket, even though they were getting him quite deep post positioning, but he was just off. I'm not too worried about it, but he was off last night. They found success later on I think it was the second half of the game where Pascal would just drive really hard. He garners a lot of defensive attention. I think that even though he's improved so much as a passer, the improvement in his handle is what's allowing him to really penetrate against defenses, which is, no matter how good or bad a defensive team is, it's not an easy feat, especially for a tall player whose dribble is higher to go through. You have all of the 4 players shading towards him. They leave one guy to kind of split the perimeter players who are on the perimeter. And it's like Precious and Boucher or something. So you're going to see your differences in that situation, even though they came through. It is the correct decision for Chris Finch to have made. But yeah, they found success with Pascal cutting and then just leaving him to improvise and to find cutters, to find shooters. And he did an excellent job, just play after the other. They're running him at point guard. And just it was really cool to see him. We already know that he is an improved passer this season, but it just speaks to the development of just his playmaking. I think someone said recently, I saw it on Twitter, I don't know who said it, but playmaking and passing they're related, but they're not exactly the same thing. Like,
yeah.
I feel like playmaking requires you to sometimes, you can be a flashy passer, a decent passer, but playmaking requires you to see plays play out in your head a few moves ahead of it actually happening. And that's what he was doing. He was penetrating. He was thinking on the move and making split second decisions and deciding whether to pass with the cutter, who was through a few possessions, Thaddeus Young. Or I think he found OG on a couple of possessions, or finding or kicking it out to Gary, to OG a few times. Even though he missed, he was still passing it out to the perimeter. And yeah, it was cool seeing him make these decisions, not only on the move, but you have about half a second to decide what you're going to do. And during those stretches where they were breaking down the zone, I think the Timberwolves went away from it. During those possessions, it was cool to see him decide what to do on the move. It was pretty cool. It was pretty cool to see. I'll think of this as kind of like a game where I've kind of where we got a bit of insight into his playmaking skill level.
Totally.
Really cool. It's challenging. Like you don't have your lead all-star point guard on the court. What are you going to do? You're going to run your power forward at point. And it worked out. I thought this game was getting away from them at the half, even though I thought, they're a great third quarter team. I didn't know if they could combat the zone. I think they really struggled against it in the second. They built a lead in the first quarter, struggled in the second quarter. I'm like, okay, this looks like it's getting away from them. I don't know if they can deal with this without Fred's gravity on the court. But they managed. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, to the point of this being a game outside of the Raptors' comfort zone, I think Pascal was kind of an embodiment of that, because, this was the first time in a long time he'd come up against like a set of wing defenders that could do a damn thing about him. Like, he's just been kind of mowing over the league. But the Wolves have McDaniels, they have Edwards, they have Pat Beverly, who, my God, Pat Beverly is just the biggest shitheel in the. I almost respect it. Like, between the messing with Gary Trent Jr. at the start of the game, getting the double texts, and then the forearm shiver to OG that he then flopped in the retaliation. Like, my God, just an insane, wonderful Pat Beverly just doing the
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, I have to respect it at this point. He's so committed to being hated by everybody that, you know what, congrats for the commitment to the bit. But they were bugging Siakam, and he still managed to find a way to be the most impactful player for the Raptors in this one. And to the point of breaking apart the zone, I mean, they just did a really wonderful job. I think kind of getting into that gooey middle of the zone too. And I kind of want to dig into that through the lens of, we'll take a quick break, Yaz.
Of course.
We'll come back to the other side. We're going to dig into how they got into that gooey middle from Siakam, and then Thad Young as well, who's, I think, a really big part of how the Raptors diced up the zone for the Wolves in this one. We'll get to that in just one sec here, but first want to tell you about our friends over at BetOnline. Football season might be over for this year, but basketball is in full steam for both pro and college hoops. From the latest odds, totals, player performance props, where to get the next fired coach, where he's going to land, BetOnline.net is the #1 spot for all of the sports betting needs that you have in your life. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline is your source for hockey, boxing, UFC, Olympic coverage as well. Plus, you've got European basketball. You've got eventually baseball coming back someday, maybe. Go to the website and check out the site. Learn all about the trends and action. You can go to the mobile device, your mobile device as well, and check it out there on their mobile site. BetOnline is where the game starts. Go check our pals out. And we continue on here, carrying over the thread from the first segment with Yasmin Duale from Yahoo Sports Canada. The Raptors zone, Pascal Siakam dicing it up. They did a really good job, Yasmin, I think, of just sort of. This is the thing about the Raptors. They struggle against zones, right? It's been a long-standing thing, even dating back to that, season you were talking about, 2019-20. It's kind of been a thing. They've been light on shooting, and they've been kind of zone prone. I found that game, by the way, you referenced in the first segment, that Heat game. They were 6 of 42 from 3 in that one. Fred goes 1 of 11. Kyle goes 2 of 12. Ibaka goes 0 of 4. Terrence
That is
Davis
bad.
0 of 5. Patrick McCaw, the best 3-point shooter on the night, 1 of 4.
Oh my god. Throwback Pat McCaw.
Yeah, shut up,
I
Pat
kind of miss
McCaw,
him.
3-time champion. Yeah. I miss getting mad at him. I miss him being the lightning rod for my scorn. But yeah, as far as how the Raptors approached it, like, they look really good when they do dice up a zone. And I think it's because they have a lot of guys who operate really nicely from the middle of the zone, like Siakam, Thad Young now. OG's really good in there. Scotty's obviously really good in there too.
Right.
And when they find a way to kind of like, just kind of get into the cracks, find those gaps in the zone, it looks beautiful. They end up with all these like beautiful passing sequences. Thad Young's throwing over the shoulder looks, and they're finding Scotty for floaters on the baseline. Like it just looks amazing. It's just they can't quite get to that all the time, but they did pretty frequently in the second half and the fourth quarter.
Right.
Where they were running like high screening actions, and then, Siakam would slip. They were just kind of attacking the zone before it was even set. I thought Thad did that really well a couple times, just like, oh, the defense isn't even set. I'm just going to cut down the middle at 100 miles an hour. He ended up getting his ass blocked on one of them, but it was really good looking cut. You had a point you wanted to get to before the break there, Yasmin, about the sort of getting into that soft middle of the zone. Carry on.
Yeah, I forgot, but the reason why I brought up that Miami game is because it's debatable. I think that's like the great analytical debate, but using 3-pointers to break down the zone, it just seems like the easier option, I feel like, because it requires less. I feel like it requires less stages of playmaking to just create the open three on the perimeter. I feel like if you have a couple guys at least with some gravity, you can kind of find those pockets of space. But for the Raptors to continuously create offense at the rim against the zone, I feel like that's more difficult, and you're getting a higher percentage shot. So I remember tweeting during the game that this is great practice for them against the zone, because they're going to see it a lot, especially with all of the non-shooters on paper on the team. So I feel like it's just the defensive scheme that they're going to encounter, especially in the postseason as well. But yeah, just seeing them create they're creating a more difficult shot in the sense that it requires more steps, but they're getting the higher percentage look, which was really cool. So that's the reason why I brought up the Miami game, because they're getting the easier shot, which was the 3, but I feel like you can't always rely on that. So that was why this game was a bit of a trap, but it was an impressive win, I think. They used it as an opportunity to test out something that they're going to look at a lot. And also, I think the reason why the Raptors have struggled with breaking down the zone is because in order to break down the zone, you need to have a tall playmaking big that can go to the center of it. And think of the past Raptors teams. Yeah, they had Marc Gasol, but generally in the 3, 4, and 5 position, they're quite weak in playmaking. So I think the difference this season is that we have quite a few big playmakers on the team who are, capable. So you look at Thad, you look at Scotty, you look at Pascal. Those are 3 I would say playmaking bigs that you can put in the middle of that. And even Precious, I feel like he's passing more often. Yeah. Precious, I feel like before was like, if he had the ball, it was going up. It was, I don't know,
probably in some sort of catastrophic way too. Yeah.
But I'm noticing he's holding on for just a second longer under the rim and kind of doing that bounce pass to the other player in the dunker spot, which is really cool. And that it just kind of adds another piece to the offense. Like, I feel like if every guy just kind of gains a little skill, like just a little trait that they do on the court repeatedly, it kind of adds to the offensive web of this team, which I think that they're building. They're trying to build that foundation and that chemistry. So if every guy has like a thing that they do on the court on offense, and I always say with Precious, he's such a good defender that if he just gains like one habit or one positive skill on the court on the other end, he's going to be in the league for a long time. He's going to be making money.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, that it does. I mean, we saw Malachi Flynn get in the game last night, I think, as like an extra shooter to work off of those guys. And it does kind of, make you a little bit upset that there wasn't some sort of trade deadline edition for another shooter, right? Because imagine how much better that interior deconstruction of the zone would work if you also had perimeter shooters who you could trust and were knockdown guys. I mean, I think last night kind of proved that like Utah and Svi are just like done in Nick Nurse's books, because like that was a prime game to get those guys in there at some point, and Malachi Flynn got in ahead of them. So I'm not sure where that leaves you feeling today if you're Utah or Svi, considering events of this season. But yeah, I thought it was just a really, really interesting sort of tactical battle because of what the Wolves were doing. And I thought the Raptors did a nice job in the back part of the game. And so that brings me to Thad Young. Boy, oh boy, I can't remember a time, Yaz, that I have fallen this hard for a player this quickly. You know, I'm thinking back to Marc Gasol's first game with the Raptors against the Knicks, where he's just like whipping crazy passes to Norm Powell and Fred VanVleet on the bench. Just like
his first game.
Oh, this is what a center can do with Pat. Like, oh my God, this is unbelievable. It's not quite to that extent with that, of course, but like last night, he was awesome, just filling in the gaps wonderfully. We talked on yesterday's show with James Herbert about how even though he doesn't necessarily space like a traditional spacer, he still spaces the floor nicely within the confines of his own range, because he's just kind of always going to the open space. He's seeping into the spots where the defense is rotating away from. And it just, he kind of just offers outlets no matter where he is. And then he takes that, gets the ball, and he's putting up little flip shots. He's, you know, driving and finishing with little flip shots. Yeah. He's throwing beautiful passes all over the place. Are you like me? Are you already we're like waving the Thad flag, like looking to buy a Thad jersey, like fully into the Thad religion? Like he's such a smart, delightful player. I think he's probably already the 6th best player on the Raptors roster. Like I think we saw last night, as much as Boucher and Precious have their moments and they bring that chaos, like the refinement that Thad brings, I think he is I think he's their 6th best player. He's their 6th man to me. And I'm excited to see how they work him in even more.
Yeah. I remember when my dad heard of the trade, he was immediately all in. He was like, yeah, Thad Young, I've wanted him on the Raptors for years. This is this is exactly what they need.
Is your dad a Raptors Reddit guy from 2014?
My dad is like, I feel he's probably in his room or something, but I feel like he's like the ball don't stop Raptors fan, where he's like he's all in on real hoopers, and Thad Young's a real hooper to him. So I personally wasn't too sure, because I feel like he's kind of another repetitive like archetype that's already present on the team. I felt like
it's a surplus to requirements for sure.
Yeah, so I'm like, okay, it's another guy that it's another guy that Masai has been hoarding, collecting like Pokemon over the last year or so now. So they're first of all, they're all in on this this thing that they're doing, this project that they're doing. They're all in. They're gonna see it out. They're gonna, I feel like they're all in for the next couple of years with this. But like you said, he doesn't space the floor traditionally. Yeah, Thad Young's open three numbers aren't terrible. Like I would trust him to take the open three on a team where we're letting Precious do so. So Thad Young has that license too. But like you said, he does space the floor in his own way, where he's not standing still in the dunker. He's not stagnant. He's moving within the confines of the paint, I felt like, and within the confines of the not the interior, but within the lines of the perimeter, which is really cool. So he's someone who can dribble, who can bring the ball up the court occasionally, which he has been doing the last couple of games. And yeah, he's always moving. He's just very multidimensional. He's not standing still. And I feel like that sometimes when the Raptors reset, within the 24-second clock, I find that they reset a couple times, and sometimes guys stay still and they get a Gary Trent bailout shot. And we've seen over the last couple of games is that even though Gary is larger than life, and I think that he's so special, last night he had 30 points. I didn't think it was a great game from him. I thought that that a lot his shot selection can sometimes be really erratic, and it's definitely something he's going to be working on this season. But I think that with Thad Young, he kind of, you could see it within the second half of the game where they were trying to look for high percentage looks rather than bailout shots, that he just helps bring them that just that soundness, that veteran leadership. What can I say? Like you just see there. I don't know, when he's on the court, I just see them looking for high percentage looks. I don't see too many of those bailout shots. And I'm really excited to see more lineups with Scotty, Pascal, Thad, and Delano, which I don't know if the numbers are correct, but last night it looked really cool.
Yeah.
You just got like 4 guys that can pass that are like 6, 7 and up, and they can all defend, and they're just all really intelligent. They're getting defenders turning around and stuff. And yeah, I want to see more of Thad Young on the court. And I think that he's going to, like you said, I don't know if he's, I don't know where he ranks in the Raptors roster right now, but he's going to be playing decent minutes.
Yeah, I think for sure. I think he, to me, I'm really excited to see some lineups. And this is, I don't want this to sound like I think Scotty Barnes shouldn't play important minutes, because I think he should. I think he has to play important minutes. They're trying to develop him, but I've said this already on the podcast, and I think I feel even stronger about it, seeing the simpatico he seems to have with Pascal Siakam. Like, give me closing lineups with Thad in place of Barnes sometimes. Like, you're just going to have like a more sort of veteran, sort of like, I think like adult presence in the middle there. Like, Scotty can be a little bit erratic, and that's fine. He's a rookie. He's 20. That's not the end of the world. But, you know, I think there's been this sort of, you know, there's been this tension, maybe not like anyone's upset about it. It's just like you see it on the court where it's like, okay, where are all these shots funneling to when the 5 guys and the starters are playing together, right? It's, you know, it's sharing the load a little bit is a lot, because you want Scotty to be involved, but Thad can very easily just slot in as the 5th option in your lineup and just do all those sort of like nitty gritty things that Scotty's learning to do, but doesn't quite do it at like the highest level just yet. And I think the like harmony you could have in a Fred, Trent, OG, Thad, Pascal lineup, like I think you could argue that if they get any sort of consistent run together, that could end up being the best Raptors lineup. So love Thad, super on board. And we're going to continue on here in just a sec, Yasmin, and close out the show with the dude of the game, the way we close out every game recap episode of the podcast. We will do that in just one sec. But first, I want to tell you about our friends over at rockauto.com. There is a lot of things at stake when you go to the mechanic, right? Like you're upset, your car is busted, you don't know what you're going to be paying, and the mechanic kind of has your fate in their hands, because they can just say, hey, this part costs this much, and there's nothing you can do about it because it's the only one we have. Well, rockauto.com addresses that problem, because they have a ton of options for you whenever you need something for your car. Right now, I have a busted headlight on my car, and I'm going to rockauto.com after recording this podcast to go and buy the headlight so I can replace it myself. And I can easily do that. I can type in my make and my model, and I can get in there and easily find the part that I want. And I get more than just one option as well. I get all sorts of brand specifications and prices to choose from. So the power is back in my hands. Rock Auto has the same prices for every customer, whether you're a pro or a do-it-yourselfer, and they can give you everything you need, from the important stuff like brake parts, the aesthetic things like tail lamps or new carpets or anything you might find. I would highly recommend you go check them out. If you need anything for your car, go to rockauto.com right now. See all the parts available for your car and truck, right? Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box to know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliable low prices, all the car parts you will ever need at rockauto.com. Go check them out. And we round out your first listen of the day with Yasmin Duale from Yahoo Sports Canada, digging into the dude of the game. And Yaz, I told you who it was before. We're going to talk about this guy, but I do want to hand out a sort of code due to the game, or due to the game honorable mention to another guy after we hand it out to the actual due to the game winner. Does that make sense? I think it does. We'll go now to the due to the game. It is, of course, Precious Achiuwa. We talked about him a little bit in the last segment, talking about how they busted up the zone. But Precious in this game, 11 points, 6 boards, hit a big corner 3, as I mentioned, in that stretch with Boucher and Achiuwa hitting back-to-back 3s in the fourth quarter. Just massive stuff. He was 5 and 9, again, 6 boards, an assist, a plus 12 overall. Really, really good defensively, once again, as you've come to expect. But offensively, I like the point that you made, Yaz, about how he's kind of slowing the game down a little bit. And I think like the analogy I would use is there's a thing in broadcasting where, you know, the concept of like a pause and a breath is very, very valuable. I probably don't do it enough on this podcast because I just talk and run straight through the wall with my words. But the best broadcasters, not me, take their time. They'll leave you hanging on every word, and they'll pause at important moments to have reflection and importance. And I think you're kind of seeing Precious Achiuwa go from me, the broadcaster, just barreling forward, to now a little bit more of a sort of calm and relaxed broadcaster, able to take a beat, let it hang for a second, wait for things to develop, get people on the edge. And I think he did that really nicely last night. I think he's done that quite nicely overall recently, you're seeing fewer of the possessions as opposed to it being like 6 possessions a game where he's derailing the offense. It's like 1 or 2, and you can live with that because he's trying stuff out. He had that weird air ball he pulled up for last night late in the game, but that 3 was just so massive. And, it just kind of, he really is settling in as a more sort of reserved player, and it's making it so you can have him on the floor for his defense and be pretty happy about it. What have been your thoughts? I know you talked about him a little bit already on today's show, but any sort of other thoughts on the way Precious impacted last night's game? You maybe want to go into his defense because we've already talked about the offense side of things. Take it away, Yaz. What are your thoughts on today's due to the game, Precious Achiuwa?
I'm super pro Precious. Yeah, I'm firmly in Precious's camp. The thing is, I remember there was an Open Gym episode that was focused on him where he mentioned that sometimes when he's on the court, he forgets to breathe. Right. It reminds you that you mentioned the pausing.
I haven't even seen that, so I didn't steal that, I promise.
Yeah, no, it just reminded me that he said sometimes he gets so tense and nervous out there, and it was noticeable. And I think when a team takes a sophomore player, like a second-year player, you have a tendency to forget that they're only in their second year because they weren't drafted by your team. And I think that's the case with Precious for a lot of people. Like, I feel like people would extend far more patience to him if they knew that this is a guy literally in his second NBA year. He was a rookie last season during all of the everything that was happening. So on a team that wasn't really prioritizing his development either, like understandably so, they were a contending team. So with Precious, that you definitely notice him pausing. I think it's just a matter of him gaining confidence within his role. He doesn't, I feel like he doesn't feel too much pressure on the court in the sense that he knows he's surrounded by talent and that his job is perhaps more defined for him, his role on the court. I noticed that he does a few things. He's going for the offensive rebounds. He's playing his defense, his pick and roll defense. Oh my goodness. It's super advanced for his being a second year player. Like, he is just not foul prone. He's frequently on bigger players, playing the 5 online. Like, you just think about what he's accomplishing. And if they're able to, like I said, help him gain just a couple of offensive skills, like if he really does develop that corner 3, if he really does become an offensive rebounding threat, or if he gains a floater or anything, which I think is totally within the realm of possibility, like with the Raptors development program and the fact that he's such a young guy. I think that Precious is going to be like a staple in the Raptors rotations. Even when he's struggling, it's the same way with Scottie. Like, I take it with a grain of salt when I see them struggle on the court. In fact, I think that those moments are important for the future of their development. So
wins and lessons.
Exactly. Like, it's just, it's important. And you see Scottie, like, I remember during, obviously I feel like Scottie's development has been rapid, which is understood. He's the number 4 pick. Playing like a rookie of the year candidate. So I feel like his development over the course of the season has been far more rapid. I remember initially he would honestly, like, there would be games they would lose because of his mistakes in the beginning of the year. As of recently, during their winning stretch, Scottie was the game deciding factor. I think in like 4 games where he had basically game-winning plays, whether it was game-winning free throws, game-tying shot or something. Like, it was just constant. And I think that's the experience from the earlier part of the season that's kind of aided him in being less nervous and erratic in late game situations. And it's a similar thing with Precious, where he's getting those reps and you're seeing the fruits of his labor. He's just, I feel like, I don't know what the numbers say, but I feel like just like similarly to Boucher, I don't know if they're turnaround coincided. I don't know if they had a meeting or an experience together that just kind of had them see the light and realize that what they need to be doing on the court. I don't know if they just had a talk and just realized, we need to be doing this or something. Maybe it was a particularly meaningful film session or something.
Yeah.
I feel like their turnaround has kind of coincided where I'm like, oh, okay, I don't feel like a knot in the pit of my stomach when it's their turn to be checked in. But yeah, Precious deserves dude of the game. He's been super dude.
Yeah, he was a dude as hell last night.
Dude
and
as hell.
I'm glad you made the point about his defense, his pick and roll defense in particular, because it's just, he is really advanced and he is so nimble that I think, not to invoke Marc Gasol again, because I keep doing that, and measuring up to Marc Gasol is very difficult.
No.
And he's never going to be Marc Gasol on offense.
Yeah.
He's never going to be Marc Gasol on offense because no one was Marc Gasol on offense, except for Nikola Jokic, who's just like super duper Marc Gasol on offense. But the thing remember what the whole sort of ethos of the Raptors was back in 2018-19. It was, they can play any defense they want because Marc Gasol can play any defense that you want a big to play. He can come hedge up high. He has the understanding of angles and floor coverage to be able to get back. He can play a drop. He can play any style of pick and roll defense. And they haven't been able to really do that because they haven't had a big of that ilk since then. And I do wonder if maybe Precious is kind of their avenue to being able to kind of diversify things on defense again, because they kind of play the same way, right? Like they're very sort of locked into Nick Nurse's super aggressive scheme. But if you have a guy who can play all of the schemes, that is going to be something that makes you more adaptable when matchups gets tricky in the playoffs. It's not going to bear total fruit this season, I would think, but the pieces are there for an all-world type big man defender with Precious, with the way he covers ground, with the way he plays taller than his 6'8", 6'9" figure. Like, he gets up and contests at the rim quite well. He's got that athleticism, the verticality. Like, I'm pretty excited and pretty high on Precious's overall defensive upside. Like, I think there's a world in which he becomes the best defender on the Raptors over the next few years. Like, I think that's totally within the realm of possibility, and any sort of steps he makes on offense are going to make that that much easier. Before we wrap up here, Yaz, I do want to hand out a code due to the game, or just a shout out to Gary Trent Jr., who was just not his most efficient game, 10 of 24. As you mentioned, it wasn't like a great shot selection night or anything like that. I think in ways they kind of needed him to just kind of take it upon himself to make something happen from time to time because of how tricky things were in the half court. And shout out to him for, I love Gary Trent Jr.'s molasses drives. This is what I call them, where he drives to the rim and it feels like he's moving like 5 beats slower than everybody else, and it still manages to work. It speaks to a lack of burst, but also, hey, if you got a counter to that and you can kind of make it work, then why not? But any thoughts on Gary Trent Jr. going off for 30, talking smack with Patrick Beverley, and also having his dad and brother sit courtside, his dad in the most luxurious looking fur coat you ever did see. I feel like Gary is at least worthy of some kind of mention on this show for his efforts last night.
Yeah, Gary is super main character. He will he'll not be the best guy on the team. I consider him part of the core. He's not the best guy on the team, even though he's phenomenal, and my expectation of him is super high. But he's like a main character. Like he's a guy. He's a guy. Gary Trent is a guy. But that's a good point about his drive slowing down. I think perhaps they realize that he is not Ja Morant. He's not going to explode towards the rim.
I think Ja could jump over Gary Trent.
But what Gary does have is ridiculous gravity, where he can, I think, work on and perfect that slow drive. Who's a player that has nailed that? I think Devin Booker is a guy who he's not crazy explosive, but what he can do is use his footwork, use his gravity to actually leverage his pump fakes, which is something few players can do. But I feel like that is actually a really good route for him to take in order to become a driving threat, because that's something he can't do right now. But I have noticed recently that his drives are slower. And I feel like, I don't know if he's succeeding with that floater shot or that push shot or whatever he's been doing, but when he does turn into a little jumper or a turnaround fadeaway or something, which is a shot that's totally within his bag, it's been really fruitful. So I would love to see more of that. But yeah, it wasn't. I don't think it was the best game from him. I do think he might have broken out of the bit of a shooting slump that he's been in, which is a bit uncharacteristic. But after 5 30-point games in a row, I have super high expectations from Gary. I think he's delivered. He's been showing these flashes for a couple years now. So I think we should just accept that this is a guy who is capable of whatever he puts his mind to. He's still super young, just turned 23, I think, this season. That's something to monitor for fans. Like, just keep an eye on Gary's driving, because if Gary becomes a capable driving threat and it becomes just a competent passer, he does not need to become I do not want Gary Trent passing. He's the release valve of the offense. But if he just kind of perhaps gains the ability to just trust his teammates on the perimeter and leverage his pump fakes a little more, that would be really it would, again, another guy gaining a small skill that would just add to the complexity of the offense and kind of just benefit the future of the team. But great game for Gary. He gave it all today. He gave his dad was giving looks. He had his family out there. He was giving drama. He was giving everything. It was a great night for him and in his hometown. So perfect.
Yeah, he's got real the main character energy is a fantastic way to sum it up. He is like if you ever seen RuPaul's Drag Race, he's like Eureka or one of those like you can't look away from them. Maybe they're not the best drag queen, they're going out in like the 6th last episode or something like that, but you can't stop thinking about him for damn sure. Gary, protagonist of Reality Trent Jr. That is his new nickname. It's a little clunky off the tongue, but we'll workshop it. Yasmin, thanks so much for hopping on the show today. Really appreciate it. Always love chatting ball with you. You're doing wonderful work. Where can people check out all of your excellent stuff?
The Dishes and Dimes podcast every Monday. We should probably be posting that follow-up to the All-Star weekend, which would be really cool. I cannot wait to see Scotty, Precious, Fred VanVleet out there representing the Raptors. I'm so excited to see Fred out there. The reason I think he's been out the last couple of games is just to save him for you don't want to.
It's 3-point contest maintenance. Yeah.
You don't want to agitate the knee before this guy's big weekend. Like, this is an undrafted player. It's history. It's it happens so few times in the NBA. And for a player making the money Fred is, and who isn't even at his best, I think that Fred has another level to reach. I'm just super excited for that. You can find my writing in Yahoo Sports Canada, Complex Canada, where I write approximately once a week there. So check it out.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Yasmin. You can find me, of course, on Twitter at Woodley Sean. You can subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcast for free. And you can go to YouTube and subscribe to the video version of the show as well. Tomorrow on the podcast, Katie Heindl is going to stop by. I believe we're going to do a mailbag episode. If you have some all-star themed questions, those would be appreciated to carry up the theme. But we'll answer any and all mailbag questions tomorrow, as we're now into no game season for about a week and a half. Much deserved rest for your Toronto Raptors. I hope they all nap heavily over the next 10 days or so. But with that, we will wrap up today's show. Go make your second listen of the day, Olympic Hockey Daily, as Rachel Donner and Ann Kimmel are over there breaking down the Olympic men's and women's tournaments, in particular the women's tournament, in particular Canada winning gold last night, baby. Go check it out. They're doing a wonderful job over there. They're both Americans, though, so they're going to be quite sad, I think, in evaluating the game, but they'll do a wonderful job of it anyway. So go listen to Olympic Hockey Daily as your second listen of the day. We'll be back in tomorrow. Talk to you then. Bye-bye.